Hello everyone, welcome to another edition of the 4LadsHadADream podcast. My name is Stevie Clifford and joining us is co-host and good friend. He is the chief sports writer at the Herald and Glasgow Times Group, Mr. Chris Jack. Chris, how are you?
Very good, Stevie. Thanks for having us on once again. We've had some really good ones over the last couple of weeks. We've certainly helped fill the lockdown period for a few of the Rangers fans, hopefully. So I'm sure they'll really like hearing some of the stories and some of the memories of the great guests we've got lined up.
Yeah, tonight we have somebody that was a major part of the journey coming up through divisions. At times he divided opinion, but he was certainly capable of a good shot and a good goal. He was Scottish Championship and Petrofac winner in 2015-2016, also part of the side that won League One 2013-2014. Highs obviously under Warburton, winning penalty against Celtic in the semi-final, lows, Petrofac final defeat, the whole kind of board debacle and things like that. What are your memories, Chris, of Nicky Law and his time at Rangers?
Somebody that I actually dealt with quite a lot during his playing career. He came into the first team at Rangers, or also signed from Motherwell, just as I was really starting to do the Rangers stuff for our papers. So somebody that I saw play quite a lot, somebody I also dealt with in press conference situations quite a lot. I think for the time that he was there, he also went through some of the highs and lows there. Overall, a good servant to the club. Some fans might not see him as the most high profile and certainly not the best midfielder that ever played for Rangers. But I think during the time that he was there, he more than did his job. He might feel a wee bit hard done by in terms of how his time at Ibrox ended. But I think overall a good midfielder, a good servant, and certainly for where Rangers were at that time. So I think he certainly did a good job for us.
I think a fair reflection would be to say that he was somebody that did well, was probably brought down by others that were with him and not up to the standard, and capable, as I said, of scoring some good goals, but maybe struggled with pressure and things like that. But certainly going to be interesting to hear his story. So without further ado, really, let's welcome onto the show Mr. Nicky Law. Nicky, how are you?
Yeah, really good, guys. Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
It's good of you to come on and join the recent kind of list of people we've had on. So you obviously tell a unique story, but like everybody, we like to start at the start of your career. So what can you tell us about your kind of formative years, Nicky? Who was your early heroes and kind of people you looked up to in football as you started your career path?
Obviously, I was a big Man United fan, really, from as young as I can remember, really. I remember going to my first game. My dad took me and my brother to the City ground to watch Nottingham Forest v Man United. And it all kind of started there, really. I think Man United won 4-0 on the day. And that was when they had a really good side. Eric Cantona was playing, David Beckham. Kind of that class of 92 kind of just onto the scene at that point. And so as I say, my love for Man United kind of started that day. My biggest hero was always been Eric Cantona. From a young boy, just obviously unbelievable football player first and foremost for Man United. He was kind of the main man at that point. So as a young boy, he was the kind of the one that caught my eye from the off. The number 7 shirt as well, which is obviously my favourite number. And then as time's gone on, obviously David Beckham, Paul Scholes, people like that really were the guys that I always admired and obviously wanted to be as a young boy, really.
So tell us a bit about your youth career and getting started in football. How did you begin to realise and make the breakthrough into youth football and the early part of your footballing career?
Yeah, from I think under 9s onwards, we moved to Chesterfield. Obviously, my dad played football as well, so we kind of followed him around wherever he was playing in his career. And towards the end of his career, he ended up playing for Chesterfield, and that's obviously where we moved to and kind of settled. My family have never left Chesterfield since then. Obviously, I've been out and about in my own career, but so yeah, under 9s, 10s, I was playing at Chesterfield. My brother Josh, obviously, who had a spell up in Scotland as well. He was in the same team as me, and my dad was our manager for, I think, under 10, 11, 12, maybe at Chesterfield, which people always obviously thought that maybe is a good thing and they'd take it easy and kind of give you special treatment, if you like. But it was always worse for me and my brother. He was always harder on me and him than anyone else in the team, which I think maybe stood us in good stead a little bit as well. And then, yeah, he obviously moved on then to be a manager himself. He ended up managing the first team at Chesterfield and had a managerial career as well. And then me and my brother moved on, obviously, as he went up. I think we both went to Nottingham Forest. I stayed there for 2 years, I think, till under 14s. My brother Josh, he left a lot earlier. He went to Chesterfield and stayed there for his youth career. And I left Nottingham Forest, as I say, I think under 14s, and moved to Sheffield United. A friend of mine was playing for Sheffield United, and I think getting to Nottingham was a bit of a nightmare for my mum and dad with their work commitments and things. So Sheffield was a lot closer for us. So I went on trial actually to Sheffield United, and they signed me. And obviously I signed a professional contract with them straight away, kind of skipped the YT stage and went straight into a professional contract at Sheffield United from leaving school really at 16. Had the opportunity at 16 to, I think it was Aston Villa and Tottenham who were trying to sign me at that stage. And I remember Neil Warnock, obviously, he, funnily enough, had managed my dad as well at Notts County, so he knew my dad, and he called my dad up and asked to speak to me. And I think we had a 10-minute conversation on the phone of him saying why I shouldn't obviously go to one of those clubs, and that he wanted me to obviously sign professional for Sheffield United, and said obviously that I'd be kind of involved with him and his first team from early on, 16, 17, and yeah, he was true to his word. And obviously I think it was probably a good decision at that point, to stay and obviously do my youth and things at Sheffield United.
Now, before we ask you, obviously, a wee bit about Sheffield United, because you had loan spells at Yeovil and Bradford. Obviously, you worked under Neil Warnock, who is a very famous character. What about your English youth career? What kind of squads were you involved in, and did you play alongside some big names in that squad? What can you tell us about your kind of early England years?
Yeah, I think it was under 16s. I went to down to Lilleshall, it was at the time, where they kind of held the England youth groups. Me and two of the other guys in the team had been selected to go down and train with the under 16 group. I think it was a week's training camp down at Lilleshall, kind of the best in England, if you like, at that age group at that point from all the teams. So we had rooms at Lilleshall, and you went down. I think there was maybe 50 lads down there for the week, training, and we had like in-house games and things like that, just giving the England coaches a chance to look at the boys. And obviously there's lots of tournaments at that stage, and I think they kind of wanted to get a look at people and things like that, and they did. I was, luckily got called back up. My manager at that time was Brian McDermott. I think he's the head of youth now at Tottenham. And I was a right back at the time, funnily enough. Sheffield United had maybe reservations about my size at that point in playing in midfield. And I think I went right back in a training game and did quite well. And then they kind of kept me there for, I think, 2 years. I was kind of playing right back. So yeah, I was a right back at that point. Got called up to the Nordic tournament, I think it was, which was a tournament with obviously ourselves and kind of Faroe Islands, Denmark, Sweden, Norway, all those types of teams. And yeah, it was kind of like a round robin tournament again, maybe for a week. And we did quite well. I remember playing on one of the games, I think it was against Faroe Islands, and I managed to score a goal as well. So that was nice, of course, representing your country and scoring. And yeah, we had some good players in the team. I think Mika Richards was in my group, who obviously at the time was very close to breaking through at Manchester City. Lee Cattermole, Daniel Sturridge, people like that. So we had a good age group. Kyle Walker, Kyle Norton, people like that were just a year below, but I remember them training with us as well. So yeah, fortunate enough to obviously represent my country, but also do it with some really good players who have gone on to have top careers.
Yeah, certainly some cracking names there, and that would have given you, I'm sure, a taste to kind of kick on in your career after representing England at such a high level at a young age. But going back a wee bit, Neil Warnock, working under him, funnily enough, Neil Warnock has actually spoken really highly of Rangers, says he's got a soft spot for him and things like that. So I don't mind him getting mentioned, that's okay. What can you tell us about Neil Warnock, the person? You obviously made your breakthrough at Sheffield United. Your loans, obviously, as we said about Yeovil and Bradford before you joined Rotherham, where you really kind of kicked on. But what can you tell us about that early breakthrough period, your loan spells, Neil Warnock, as he is? We've obviously all seen the famous dressing room clips and things like that. He's obviously a fantastic character. But how was he with you, and how much did you enjoy his kind of influence on your early career and your spells at Yeovil and Bradford and things?
Yeah, I did. He was great, and obviously, as I touched on earlier, he managed my dad as well, which is funny enough. But that kind of, I think, maybe put me on his radar a little bit. Obviously, that he knew my dad, and he was great with me. I think he obviously always had an eye on me coming through the 14s, 15s, 16s, and yeah, he was, and as I say, he ran me at that time, asking me obviously to turn the clubs down, those big clubs at that point. And we had a great conversation on the phone. And yeah, as you see him in those clips, probably that is just obviously how he is. Quite eccentric, if you like, but he was fantastic with players and getting the best out of players. That was obviously what he was good at and what he's done so well in all his career. And obviously his promotions and things like that show for that. But yeah, he was great. He had me up training with the first team really early on, and gave me my debut, I think, at Sheffield United at the age of 17 in a cup game. Came on the way to Reading, and yeah, did quite well. And he was great with me again. He was never too concerned about my slight frame. After that point, I didn't have a lot of muscle. I was really skinny and quite small, and had maybe held me back in the younger groups, to the point where obviously I think Sheffield United at maybe under 15 level were maybe thinking about letting me go. But no, Neil was great. And that move to right back kind of really just gave me a bit of extra time, and that's when obviously the bigger clubs kind of came sniffing around with the England call up and things like that, and doing quite well with them, and training with the first team at Sheffield United at a young age, with some really good players. Obviously Phil Jagielka, Michael Brown was there at that point. He was flying, and I think he got his move to Tottenham quite soon after that. Michael Tong, people like that who have had great careers. All these types of figures were really big in obviously helping me settle in as a young boy. Going up and training with the first team is really daunting at that age. Someone myself, obviously at that point, was really quiet as well. So yeah, it was difficult, but all those big characters made it really, really easier for me. And obviously Stuart McCall was a player at that point as well, and that's kind of where our relationship began as well.
So, Nicky, in June 2009, you had a lot of interest in you after your time ended at Bramall Lane. but you chose to sign for Rotherham, and it was at this point you really kicked on. There was lots of assists in your game. You made a big impact on the squad. You quickly became a fan's favourite, and there was interest as the season would go on from Middlesbrough, from Blackpool, and things. What can you tell us about Rotherham, and how much of a kind of impact on your career did that move make, and help you really get the consistency that we would later see you move to Motherwell and things? How much did you enjoy Rotherham, and what can you tell us about your time there?
Yeah, it was, as you say, kind of maybe the start of my career, really. Although I broke in really young at Sheffield United, made my debut and things like that early on and young. It was kind of a bit of a broken up time at Sheffield United. As you say, I'd made my debut young under Neil Warnock, and then he gave me my Premier League debut. Not too soon after that either. Played some games there, and then had a broken collarbone injury in a reserve game. As an 18-year-old at Sheffield United, just went through with a goal. He got pushed over and went into his knees, I think, and crushed my collarbone. And obviously it was, I think, a 3 or 4 month injury, and I was supposed to go away with England under the 20s that summer into a World Cup and things like that. And obviously the injury came at a really bad time for me. So, and then in that period, we got relegated from the Premier League with Sheffield United. Neil Warnock and obviously Stuart McCauley was really big in me getting my debut there. He was the assistant manager to Neil at the point, and kind of pushed me in, and kind of when maybe Neil needed just a little bit of someone else to kind of just maybe say that I was ready to play, and I think Stuart was that guy, and they both left. And unfortunately that injury, and then I think Brian Robson came in at that point, and Brian Kidd was his assistant manager, and they were two, again, unbelievable people to work for, particularly for me as a huge Man United fan. That's two Man United legends coming in, and unfortunately I missed the pre-season there, and then needed to go out and play some games. Went on loan to, as you say, Bradford under Stuart. He got the managerial job there, and had a good season there on loan, and then went back to Sheffield United. Kevin Blackwell had been appointed manager at that point, and for whatever reason, he just never took to me as a player. I wasn't his type of player. So yeah, I just kind of got to a point in my career where I think I had 1.5 years of my contract left at Sheffield United, which was a good contract at that time, because Neil Warnock had given me a good contract as a young player. I don't think Kevin Blackwell was too pleased with the deal I was on, and he wanted me to go. So obviously Stuart wanted me to sign permanently then at Bradford. Mark Robbins was the manager at Rotherham at that point. Obviously I knew all about Stuart and Bradford as a club. I went and met Mark Robbins. We had I think a 30-minute meeting. My dad came along with me. Just his ideas and what he wanted from me. That was the year after Rotherham had started that season with a really big minus points to start that season, and they almost made the playoffs that year. So I knew they had a good team. I knew Mark Robbins was a good up-and-coming manager. It was a really difficult decision, obviously, to say no to Stuart and not sign permanently at Bradford, when I just had a really great season there under him, and enjoyed my football as I always have done under him. But I just felt at that point maybe Rotherham was the better fit for me. I just felt that Bradford had lost quite a lot of good players that summer, and I felt that maybe they might struggle a little the next season. And I felt that Rotherham were on the up, although they were playing at the Don Valley Stadium at that point, which by no means it wasn't a nice place to play. It was obviously not Rotherham's normal stadium. It was in Sheffield. There was a big track around it. Only one side of the stadium was open, and it was miles away from the pitch. It wasn't great. And I'd experienced that in my time at Bradford on loan. We had a game there. I think I scored that day actually for Bradford as well, and we won 2-0. But yeah, it was just obviously speaking to Mark Robbins, and yeah, so I'm obviously got paid up from Sheffield United, and I made the decision to go to Rotherham, signed a 2-year deal there, and yeah, just kind of hit the ground running early on there under Mark Robbins. We made a flying start to the season. I was playing well myself, as you say, getting some assists. Didn't score as many goals as I would have liked at that point in my career as a young lad. I think, as a lot of young guys do, maybe just don't have that composure in front of goal. And I think that was certainly the case for me at that point. But I'd always, as I've seemed to have done in my career, have had a good assist ratio there. I was playing wide right at that point. Actually had a little bit of pace around about me at that time, so I could get away with playing wide. And yeah, enjoyed it. It was just unfortunate. I think 4 months into my time there, Mark Robbins left quite early. He got the job at Barnsley, and obviously in my time that I had done quite well for Mark. He tried to sign me that January for Barnsley, myself and Adam Lafondra at that point. He was trying to sign the both of us, and obviously Rotherham wouldn't let us go. And Ronnie Moore came back to the club, and he became manager then, which was... It was good. Obviously, he was a legend for Rotherham from his previous spell as manager. It was a different style of play to what we'd been playing under Mark Robbins, who obviously wanted to play a little bit more football maybe than Ronnie did. He was more direct. So I think we fell. Yeah, we did. We lost the playoff final that season to Dagenham and Redbridge, which was really disappointing at Wembley. I think we certainly fell short that day. We were a better side than Dagenham and Redbridge. It's a game we should have won, but we didn't. And then I think the season after that, we struggled a little bit. Ronnie Moore got sacked. We were in the playoff picture, promotion picture for most of the season. Then we kind of fell away. He got sacked, and then Andy Scott came in. My contract obviously was up at that point. And I just felt that at that point it was maybe better that I moved on. The only situation was that I was under 23 at that point, so Rotherham were making it quite difficult for me to stay in England with the clubs that were interested. They were asking for quite a lot of compensation, and it was just making the situation difficult. And of course, then that was when the decision kind of came that I could go cross-border for nothing up to Scotland. Stuart had been on to me, obviously, since he had that job at Motherwell about maybe going up when my deal was up and things like that. So that was kind of that phase of my career. And then we came, obviously, to the decision of my next move, really.
What is it about working with Stuart McCall that appeals to you as much, Nicky? You obviously had your whole career is kind of marked by time working under him. As Stevie said, we had him on the podcast a couple of weeks ago, and I can imagine he's the type of manager that players just love to play for. And a great guy, but a really good football guy, and he also had some great success over his managerial career as well. What is it about him that you just enjoy that much, and why did the two of you click that well?
Yeah, as I say, our relationship started as players together. Funnily enough, he was obviously at the end of his career at that point, Stuart. I think he was playing at 39, 40 at Sheffield United, and he kind of at that point was moulding into the coaching role, but he was still playing like the reserve games, which I was playing at the time. And I think he just obviously kind of saw the strengths in my game and then enjoyed obviously watching me play and trying to help me and things like that. So even as an older player and myself, a young player at that time, he was always helpful with all the young boys, not just me. So he was great. And then he got the Bradford job and he took me there on loan for 2 spells early in his managerial career. And that was quite a successful period for me. And he's just always... focused on my strengths and more than obviously maybe the things that I've not been so good at in my career. He's always wanted me to just go out and obviously driving with the ball. That's what he loved in my game. That was the biggest thing that he loved in my game, that I could obviously dribble with the ball through the middle of the pitch, which he always said that was something so rare as a central midfield player, that you could carry the ball and go past people. And it's something obviously that you don't see much now, but something I was really good at, particularly in my obviously younger years. And just that freedom to go and play and do what I was good at. And he always found that role for me, which was either obviously central, maybe in a 3. I don't think he loved me central in a 2. I don't think defensively has always been my biggest strength, but in a 3, he'd always play me in the middle, or he'd just give me that role, which you've probably all seen me play under him, which is off that left side, where kind of just go and be free, go where you want. But obviously in a defensive shape, always kind of find my way back to that left side. But in an attacking way, just be free, go find pockets, get on the ball, and drive past people and try and create goals and score goals. And just that freedom. And obviously you spoke to him, you've met him, you'll have a feel for his nature as a guy. He's one of the good guys of football. Anyone that's come across him would say the same thing about him, I'm sure. What a good guy he is, first and foremost. Family man, obviously he's got his family, and just a really good guy. And so as I say, for me, the biggest thing has always been the freedom to play and kind of do what I do best, really.
I'm assuming when he was having that conversation with you about coming up to Motherwell, Champions League football probably wouldn't have come up in that particular conversation, or how that first season with you, if Paracosta goes really well, you then get into the Champions League and you're passing Icos in the qualifying round. How big a night was that for, not just yourself now, but everybody associated with Motherwell? Now, the thought of them being at that level, certainly one that was well deserved given your exploits that season. But just can you talk us through that whole European experience for you?
Yeah, no, you're right. It was unbelievable. Obviously, I met Stuart, funnily enough, in Florida that year. I was on holiday there with my brother and a friend of ours. Stuart was out there with his family. I think he goes there every 2 years, and we had a good chat. He came to my hotel and we sat down for, I can't remember, it was a good while though. I think there was a bit of I don't think Stuart maybe thought that I'd make the move up to Scotland, away from obviously my home, where I'd been all my life. All the clubs I'd played for were all local, really. I could live at home and travel from home. And I just don't think he maybe fully believed that I'd make the move up there. But he still came out, had a chat with me, and obviously European football was never really mentioned. He did say obviously that it was a great stage for me to come up at that age in my career, and obviously with the press that league gets and the games on television. And I think obviously he'd just gone in there maybe October, November time of that season, and they made the Scottish Cup final, Motherwell, the season before I got up there. Obviously lost to Celtic, but the exposure obviously of going up and how well they'd done, how big the games were, particularly the Celtic Rangers games. He said obviously if you come up, do as well as he thought I could do. He said to me that he believed that I'd get a move to obviously one of the big 2 old firm clubs, and obviously later on that did materialise. But as you say, the European nights were an added bonus. I don't think when I came up we expected to finish the best of the rest of that season. Obviously at that point I knew we had a good side. I think it's only now maybe when you look back and you realise just how good that side was. Obviously we had Darren Randolph in goal, who was unbelievable and has obviously gone on to play in the Premier League now. Tom Haitley right back, very solid. Craggs, Sean Hutchinson, who's playing Championship now. Hammy, such a great servant for the club. Laz, the same. Myself, Jamie Murphy, who's had a great career down in England and still is doing. Henrik Ijama, Chris Humphrey. It was a brilliant team, but I still say to this day one of the best sides I've played in. For obviously, it just had that feel that we felt that we were a good side, and even in those Rangers Celtic games, we've just felt like whoever we played against in that side that we'd do well and we could win. And we finished third that season, and obviously with what happened to Rangers and things like that, we obviously dropped into the Champions League qualifying game. And yeah, 2 games against Panathinaikos, just that experience of European football was great. Obviously the result wasn't good at all, but strange really. I think we felt over the 2 games that we played really well. Maybe the better of the 2 sides, but on aggregate we obviously lost that 5-0. So that just gave you an idea of the level, really, the difference in level maybe with those sides. And that was Panathinaikos, who, no disrespect to them, weren't even one of the bigger sides in obviously that competition, but they punished us. But yeah, as an experience, it was fantastic. And then of course our reward for that was Levante in the Europa League then, where again we played quite well, but we obviously in the end went out of that quite convincingly as well. But yeah, they're both 3-4 games which I look back on with great fondness now in my career, and can say obviously that I got the chance to play in qualifiers in both those competitions is fantastic. And another reason why when people ask me now about obviously Scottish football and the opportunity of going up there, particularly for young boys, I can't speak highly enough of doing that.
That 12-13 season, you also round off some of the guys that were in that squad, and that 12-13 season finishing second in such a memorable fashion up at Pittodrie. One of the names you didn't mention there, Michael Higdon, also named in the PFA Team of the Year, and had quite an eventful evening at the PFA dinner that season. What do you remember about that night? How did you find out that Big Michael's night hadn't quite gone to plan?
Yeah, obviously forgot Big Higgy, which I shouldn't have done. He was obviously maybe the main man of that team at that point. But yeah, as you say, we as a squad we knew Higgy was one of the 4 players up for the nomination of the award, and maybe had an idea that they had a great chance of winning the award. So I think the whole team went to the event that night. I think when we got there, you could see that Big Higgy had maybe had a few already. I think he'd made it an all-day celebration. So he was a little worse to wear before he'd even got to the event. And yeah, there was obviously no problem at the awards. I think all the lads were there, obviously having a few drinks and enjoying the night, as was Big Higgy, I think, even. And then, of course, he won the award and everyone was delighted for him. I think his speech is a very memorable one now. I think you could see, obviously, how much struggling he was. I think Stuart and Kenny Black as well, they were struggling up on the stage with him just as much. But yeah, obviously, he definitely had a few. But I think once the event was over, I think a lot of us had gone home. And that was kind of the end of the night for the majority of the squad. I think we had training, definitely not the next day, but maybe the day after that, and some big games still to play as well, as we were trying to obviously secure second place. So I think Higgy had enjoyed his night. Yeah, as you say, maybe a little bit too much. I think the next day was maybe in the group chat, maybe some murmurs of maybe something had happened the night before. We weren't quite sure what it was until obviously the next day we came into training and Higgy came in. I think he had a black eye. And yeah, obviously then he obviously told us what had happened that night. I think it was the Corinthian bar, if I remember rightly. He was coming down the steps maybe there. I think they'd thrown him out. He'd had too many. Maybe he was acting up. I'm not too sure. And I think people were coming up the stairs to kind of take him out. I think he kicked them back down the stairs and obviously got himself arrested for the night. And yeah, and then we'd obviously found out quite late on the next day, obviously what had happened, and it was unbelievable. I don't think anybody has before that or after, won the award and then been arrested the same night. So it's quite some going from Higgy.
Nicky, in May 2013, you announced that you would be leaving Motherwell, and very quickly it was kind of came to the fore that you would be joining Rangers. A little bit of a difficult start in terms of the transfer ban we were currently under wouldn't lift until the 1st of September. You described it as an impossible move, a once in a lifetime move, impossible move to turn down. You would later be paraded in what can only be described as the biggest shorts that we've ever seen. I remember at the time, the Puma, it was yourself and Ricky Foster and that, the pictures, and they were gigantic. What was the early impressions of Rangers, Ali McCoist, and what made it an impossible move to turn down?
Yeah, as you say, I think towards maybe January, February of my last season with Motherwell, obviously as a team we were playing well. Myself, I was playing well. I'd had a couple of really good games live on Sky against Celtic. I think man of the match and set a few goals up over the course of those 2 games, and yeah, I was coming to the end of my contract, and interest was definitely growing at that point, as it was in quite a lot of the boys who were out of contract at that point. And Ali McCoist, I think from maybe February onwards, he made it clear that he obviously wanted me to join Rangers. And even really from that point, from when I spoke to Ali McCoist, it was the kind of the deal that I wanted to do, and it was what I told my agent at that point, that the Rangers, if the deal could be done, was kind of where I wanted to go. And obviously, I think there was quite a bit of interest from back down in England. I think Sheffield United, Birmingham, and a couple of other teams were interested in taking me. And although a lot of people at that point, particularly obviously I think Motherwell fans at that point, were kind of thinking that the biggest reason for me going to Rangers was for the money, and you could say it till you're blue in the face, obviously, and I don't think people will believe it, but I turned down more money to go back down to England and play than I did when I signed for Rangers. It was, I think the biggest thing was a meeting I had with Ali McCoist. Again, my dad came with me. He asked me to go to Murray Park and meet him and have a look around the training ground, which I did. And I think this was in maybe April, towards the end of that season, and I'd spoke to Stuart McCall, and obviously he knew Ali McCoist, and he was fine with me going and having a look and meeting Ali. So I did. Yeah, I went down Murray Park, and he showed me around the training ground. We had a chat in his office. Yeah, a good long chat for an hour. And again, Ali, very similar to Stuart McCall, and he's got an unbelievable charisma and everything he was saying. He was brilliant that day. So such a huge legend, not just for Rangers, but in Scottish football. So meeting him was brilliant. And once we finished at the training ground, he took me down to Ibrox, showed me around Ibrox. And then, once you see Ibrox and the trophy cabinet, and takes you around the stadium, the offices and the changing rooms, you just feel the history of the club straight away, and the way that Ali spoke about the club, and obviously the road back and things like that. It was just, I just knew straight away that I just wanted to sign there. I wanted to play in that stadium and in front of those fans. It's a difficult feeling, really, to kind of explain unless it's happening to you. I just couldn't say no at that point to Ali and Rangers, and we managed to get the deal done, and obviously I'd signed there. I knew obviously at that point what had happened to the club, the history and things like that, and it looked, of course, at that point that the club had kind of turned the tide, if you like, off the field and things like that, and things were looking up and looking forward. So delighted at that point to get the deal done and sign there. It's still one of the biggest clubs in the world now, if you like, still even. I believe so. So yeah, it was impossible, as I said, to turn it down.
Now, we've had a couple of your old teammates on this show, Stevie Smith, Dean Shields, and they've obviously spoke about your experiences. But we obviously dominated League One, unbeaten. But you spoke during that time. I remember there was an article attributed to you on the day that we actually went to, I'm sure it was Stenhousemuir, and we won 4-0, and you actually scored an absolute beauty right in front of us, funnily enough. But you were saying that it was difficult to deal with the pressure and going to these grounds and things like that. I'm not entirely sure what it was, but there was some murmurings in the stand that day. How did you enjoy the League One challenges? Because obviously unbeaten, fine, but it's expected. Nobody really thought anything of it. We had the Challenge Cup defeat to Wraith, which was a major blow. There was obviously the fallout afterwards with the karaoke from Coisty and everything else, and it's just that things started to unravel off the pitch and that as well. And Dean's obviously spoke to us about this, so is Stevie. But what was it like for you? Because this is your debut season, you're going to Rangers, and there was always seemed to be something else happening instead of being able to enjoy it on the pitches. Is that a fair kind of description of your first year? And obviously the championships, which we'll speak to about in a minute. But what did you make of your first season at Rangers? Obviously you scored some great goals, but overshadowed possibly?
Yeah, definitely. As you say, my originally signing there was, as you touched on, the issue with the signings and only being able to play. I think I can't remember how many it was. Was it 3 new signings at a time for I think maybe 5 or 6 of the first games? No, you could only play 3. I think of the first 6 games or something like that. I don't know. You couldn't play in the cup either. So quite a strange start, but obviously personally I got off to a flying start, scored 2 on my debut in the Challenge Cup game, and then scored in my first league game at Ibrox, and things couldn't have started better for me, obviously. And then then the adulation and things which kind of happens around you when new signings come in, and obviously you start like that, and then kind of it was strange from then on in, really. As you say, we were unbeaten in the league that season, but a lot of the games just didn't feel like you'd won. Maybe you just felt like you'd lost them, because it was never enough that season, and as you say, everything was expected, but if it wasn't 3 or 4-0 and you didn't batter them, it wasn't good enough. And I think that was the biggest thing for me, probably for the first time in my career, was something that I'd had to deal with, that pressure, as you say, of playing for a club that size with that big a following. And and obviously then things off the field as well start to pick up, and you start to hear, and it definitely affected the players. And as you say, although we were unbeaten that season, it felt like it definitely didn't feel like a season of going unbeaten. A lot of the games you did feel like you hadn't won them, because obviously maybe the reaction of the fans and things like that, and what was going off the field, it was all building. And then the Challenge Cup loss to Wraith in the final was a real low. I think we lost to Dundee United as well in the Scottish Cup the week after that at Ibrox, quite convincingly to obviously a really good Dundee United side at that point. But at that point, it definitely felt like things were bubbling up, maybe not even obviously outside the club, and things were happening all the time, and it was just obviously difficult to deal with, really.
Just on that point, and talking about the fans and things, I remember that season Rangers won 8-0 at home. I don't know if you remember this game, Nicky.
Yeah.
And big Billy Mosney scored a kind of overhead, his 8th one.
Yeah.
Just after that, Lee Wallace missed a bit of a sitter, and I remember being in the ground, and we were going out, and there was this guy going absolutely nuts. Not good enough, 8-0, it should have been 9, it should have been 10. And in terms of pressure for you guys, I mean, listen, we all know that we were expected to kind of dominate things, and rightly or wrongly, that's the way that the sport is. But is that what you found really difficult in terms of kind of dealing with and the pressure and the expectation levels?
Yeah, definitely, I'd say. And people, obviously, even when I was there, would always say, obviously, that I couldn't deal with the mental side of that and the pressure, and not just me, all the lads. And I think even the boys that are still there now still get it. And I think anyone playing for Rangers in a period where maybe things aren't going as well will always maybe have that label at them. I don't think you can hide from that. Even now, if you look this season, I remember Rangers going to Celtic Park and winning just before the winter break there, and obviously the adulation and everything from the fans and the excitement of winning that game, and maybe people starting to think that obviously Rangers could win the league this season, and then you come back from the winter break, I think 2 or 3 games later, they maybe haven't won, and they're getting the same things labelled at them as what we were when I was at the club. And as you say, it's just something you cannot get away from at a club the size of Rangers. It's win at all costs. You have to win every single game. It was something that obviously Alan McCoist spoke to me about before I signed, and you listen and you think, yeah, definitely. But until you're actually there, until you're actually a player for that club and you feel it yourself, you can't obviously explain how difficult it is. It's definitely a special type of person that can obviously do that and kind of deal with that pressure as well. And that's obviously why the big players in world football now can do that and get paid huge money to do it, because obviously it's a huge mental strength that it takes. And I'm not saying obviously that I couldn't do it. It was I just I do wish obviously that I would never obviously wish my time away from Rangers, but I would have loved to have obviously signed for Rangers at maybe a time where things weren't so tough, particularly off the field. With all the problems, I would have loved to have had a crack at Rangers when obviously they were fighting at the top end of Scottish football. And I always remember when Kenny Miller came back to the club in that championship season, just speaking to him. I think it was quite early on in his first season back, and just asking him about obviously when he was there the time before and the successful times and the way he spoke about it. And he said to me also that I think it was maybe pre-season away in up in Brewer actually. He just said like he would have loved to have obviously for me to have experienced that, maybe that spell of playing with people like Stephen Davis, Stevie Naismith and people like that. He felt obviously that I think Rangers would definitely have seen a better version of me, maybe playing with obviously those types of players. It's hypothetical, of course, but no, I would have loved obviously to have had a spell there in better times, if you like, particularly off the field.
Before we do talk about those better times, we need to kind of cover the championship season, the first time, which was really difficult to talk about in many ways because it was a bit of a nightmare. Obviously, had the season doesn't start off well. A lot of financial stuff. I know that you guys, Dean told us that you guys were asked to take wage cuts and things like that. Obviously, really difficult situations. Ali would end up leaving. Kenny then comes in and we get, it goes from bad to worse. We get kind of hiding off Celtic at Hampden. We don't have shots and goal. We then go to Hibs and we get murdered there 4-0. And it's just a really terrible kind of season. And it's not the players' fault. It's not the fans' fault. And there was kind of a bit of a revolt and everything else before the regime change comes in. But that must have been, I know how difficult it was for us as a support, and that obviously transcends onto a pitch. But it must have been a really difficult period for you, especially with Coisty going and things like that. Can you talk us through that kind of 6, 7, 8 months before regime actually did happen and the fans began to get back on side again?
Yeah, well, definitely the toughest season of my career. It would be difficult for me to say that I can't imagine there'd be too many more difficult seasons that anybody could have played for Rangers in the history of the club. I don't know. I mean, it was certainly one of the lowest. I would imagine that one of the toughest you could have been involved in. As you say, I think obviously we'd been unbeaten the season before. We knew we had a side good enough, even if we hadn't assigned anyone to. Well, the expectation, of course, would have been that we win the league again. Maybe not unbeaten, but as close to being unbeaten as possible was kind of the expectation. And then, of course, we had Kenny Miller and Chris Boyd to that, two players who had been at the club and knew what it was all about and scored loads of goals for the club and kind of just, again, furthered that expectation that we'd go on and dominate the league again and we'd be back in the top flight straight away. And we felt that as players as well. That, I mean, if you look at that squad on paper, we should have done. I think we went away in pre-season. We had a really bad tour. We went to America. We had about, I think, 7 or 8 flights in the space of I don't know how long we were there, but maybe a week to 10 days. We had so many flights. We got there, and I think not the first night, the second night we had a pre-season friendly. It was on an American, it was like I don't even know, a college, but it was on an American football pitch, AstroTurf, at night when it was like everyone was jet lagged, and we got battered that night by I don't even know what they were, an American college team. They absolutely don't. I think we lost 3-0. And that kind of summed that season up really from that first pre-season game that night when everyone was half asleep playing a pre-season game on an AstroTurf, and it kind of just felt a bit of a shambles that from that pre-season really. And I think Ali McCoist was kind of trying to fit everyone into the team. We were trying a 3-5-2, I think, in pre-season. It looked like we were going to try, and I actually think we played that in the Challenge Cup game against Hibs at Ibrox. We won the game in extra time, 2-1 in the end, but Hibs were better than us on that night, and we really struggled in that formation. I think in the end we did go back to a 4-4-2 eventually, but yeah, we started the season poorly. Of course, we lost at home to Hearts on the first day of the season, which was a big game on telly. We just never really recovered that season. We picked up a little bit after that, and it looked like at one point our form had picked up, and we'd maybe go on then to take over Hearts and obviously do what I think everybody expected us to go on and win the league. We were showing good form, and people maybe thought the Hearts would fall away. And then I think October, November, it just looks, obviously then it starts to look like that maybe they're not going away. And then of course we start losing a few games again, and then things start, as you touched on, start going downhill again off the field and then, as you know, obviously once the results turn, it was chaos. And then obviously you hear, I think the night of Queen of South away, that Ali was not the manager anymore. And then we got to Murray Park to leave for the game, and he was there. We had a meeting. He said, obviously, I think he said it was a load of rubbish, to ignore it. We were to go to the game, and it's kind of all started from there, really. I think we lost that game. We were supposed to go away that night on our Christmas do. We lost. We were desperately poor on the night. I'd be surprised if we even had a shot on target, to be honest. It was.
Yeah, I think we got beat 3-0 that night. That was a very difficult one.
And it was a weird night, obviously, from hearing that Ali was leaving, and then him saying that he wasn't. And then, as you say, we lost the game. We were shocking that night. And then he said that he couldn't let us go away on the Christmas do, which was absolutely fair because he couldn't. And obviously, I think I don't know if he left, he got put on gardening leave that night or if it was the next day. And obviously we were all a bit like, well, we didn't really have a clue what was going on because Yeah, obviously we didn't get told, but then Kenny McDowell obviously stayed on for a period. He was the interim manager. And yeah, all this was going on obviously as we had the semi-final against Celtic coming up at Handon. There was all sorts as well going on off the field, as you say. Kenny was very open in the fact that he certainly didn't want to be the manager, and I don't think he wanted to be at the club anymore. And I remember the preparation the day before for the Celtic game was, we knew obviously how tough it was going to be. Celtic were brilliant at that time, obviously Virgil van Dijk, people like that, and we knew it was going to be tough, but kind of, I think obviously with what Kenny was saying, that he didn't want to be there, and that basically how tough it was going to be for us, and we were defeated before we'd even got to the stadium, to be honest. Yeah, again, definitely didn't have a shot on target that day. It was an embarrassing day, really, for us to have an Old Firm game like that and not really even put up a fight. 2-0 down early on, and if you're honest, fortunate enough that it stayed at 2-0, and as embarrassing as it was, it could have been even more embarrassing. So obviously lost that game, and we were losing games in the league as well to teams that we should never have been losing to. But at that point, it had all collapsed around us. It was difficult. Hearts were flying. They were away in the league. We were never going to catch them. And yeah, as you say, the pay cuts and things like that. I remember, I think on deadline day, it looked like, for me, I was close to moving. I think Neil Lennon wanted me to go to Bolton, who were in the Championship at that time. I was waiting for a phone call that day to say that the move was happening. I was to go down on medical, but things happened on that. I think in the end, Rangers said I couldn't go, even though I hadn't had a great season myself. But I think I was the top scorer still at that point, and they just didn't want me to go. So in the end, I didn't go, obviously. And then I think Kenny got his situation sorted out, and then yes, obviously then Stuart and Kenny kind of came in as an interim manager at that point to try and obviously save the season.
It was in the March of that season, Nicky, obviously quite a big period for the club in terms of the regime change and Dave King, John Gilligan and Paul Murray coming in. Were the players aware of how significant that would be for the club and for the fans? And then in a playing point of view, when we had Stuart on a couple of weeks ago, he said when he walked into that dressing room, he couldn't believe how low the whole squad was, the whole club was. And you think of the club that he knew back during his days, the Rangers that he walked into was a very different Rangers to the one that he left. And you think you sum up how the whole kind of situation around about the club at that time? There a lot to deal with if the players both on the park and off the park.
Yeah, definitely. As you say, it's unless you're in it, you can't obviously explain probably how low it was in that changing room at that point. Yeah, as low as I've been in my career, definitely, and it's so difficult. Obviously, it's a difficult place to play at the best of times, Ibrox. Anyway, it's with the expectation, but at that point, it was almost impossible. It was whatever you did was never going to be good enough, and I think with what was going off the field at the club at that point, I think the only release the fans had was when they came into the stadiums on a match day. Was kind of that was the only time they had their voice, if you like, to voice the disgruntlement of what was going on, of course, on the pitch, what they were seeing on it, but also with what was going on off the field as well. So, yeah, it's hugely difficult, and obviously even for Stuart coming in, and it was mission impossible for Stuart. I don't think anybody could have come in at that point and picked it up. Although obviously it did pick up, obviously, when Stuart came in a little bit, and obviously with Dave King and Paul Murray, as you say, coming in as well, that definitely gave the fans a lift and a bit of belief. And I think you just hope then with all the changes that had gone on and kind of false hope previously with people kind of coming into the club and promising things that never really happened, and you just hope that this time that obviously the promises would be fulfilled. And obviously we knew at that point we were never going to win the league, we were never going to catch Hearts, but it was important that our performance has improved and the mood improved going into it, so we knew we'd be involved in the playoffs. And yeah, he did. Obviously, he did his best, Stuart, at that point to do that. He kind of played a lot of the younger boys and kind of involved a lot of them. I remember Andy Murdoch coming onto the scene at that point. Robbie Crawford as well came into it. And he kind of gave those boys a chance, Stuart, along with quite a few of the experienced boys that he wanted to involve. And yeah, obviously we did end up getting to the final that day. And then again, I think the 2-leg final, although it was definitely came at the end of a period of games where we'd had so many games that the lads were knackered at that point. We definitely needed to score the first goal in that playoff leg to kind of kick on. And of course, when Motherwell scored first, then from then on it was kind of a 2-legged disaster then, which summed up the season that had just passed as a whole, really. Those 2 games definitely summed up the season that had just gone by.
Did you have any hesitation in staying on when it announced that Mark Warburton was coming in as manager alongside Davy Weir? Did you think this is a fresh start for me? I can now go and enjoy the type of Rangers career that you also hoped you would do? Or did you think, I've kind of been here, seen it, I've not really enjoyed it, considering what's going on, now's maybe the time to head back down the road? Also, that championship season ends up working out quite well for you in terms of winning the league and completing the journey, and also winning the Petrofac Cup. But was there any stage where that season might not have happened for you?
Yeah, I remember obviously the end of the season where we lost to Motherwell in the final. I think speaking to Stuart, maybe saying that if I could get away, then I would have obviously maybe taken that opportunity to go. And as I say, I was close in the January of going to Bolton. And I maybe thought that was maybe something that would happen come the end of the season. Unless maybe obviously I felt that Stuart maybe had the chance to stay on as manager. If that had been the case, then I would have definitely have stayed on. I was on holiday, I think, in Turkey when Mark Warburton got the job, and I had another 4 or 5 days left of my holiday, and he'd text all the boys to say that everyone was in, I think, the next day. So I had to ring Mark Warburton and obviously explain that I was away in Turkey. He said that those were the dates that had been given for us to be back were obviously not whilst I was on holiday. I would never have done that, but if I could have got back, great, but it wasn't expected. But obviously I found flights. I think me and my girlfriend at the time, we flew back that night into Glasgow, and I was in the next day. So sat down with Mark Warburton and David Weir at the time, and kind of said that the season had just gone by, not just for me, but for all the lads that were still there. There wasn't many of us, but had been difficult. And I think they'd heard maybe from other people that I'd said if I could leave, I would have liked to have left. But he sat me down. We had a good chat. They kind of explained their style of play, how they wanted to play, how they seen the season going, kind of thing. And it all sounded good. So nothing really came of it from there. I went away and we had our pre-season, and you could start to slowly see that the mood had lifted, and just the training there was definitely a lift in training, some new signings, and just the style of play alone was so good. That was the biggest thing that I enjoyed under Mark Warburton, was his style of play, and his training was brilliant. You just started to enjoy it a little bit again, and definitely the start that we had under Mark Warburton, the fans were coming back on side, and they were enjoying the football, and we were blowing teams away, and you kind of had that sense that we were going to go up that season and do it quite comfortably. We made some good signings, there were some good players, and it kind of all suited that. the style that Mark wanted to play. But I think even from, although I started quite a lot of the games in that season, the manager was slowly obviously starting to bring his own players in, and I always felt at that point that maybe the message to Mark Warburton was to obviously try and get rid of maybe as many people who were kind of associated with the poor 2 years that were there just before Mark had got there. So you kind of got that feeling, not just myself, all the boys really that were there, maybe apart from Lee Wallace and Kenny Miller, that maybe your time was coming to a close. And I think from there you kind of just get to the point of accepting that and just enjoying those final few months of knowing that you were going to win the league. I think we won the Petrofac Cup that year as well, although I expected it was still a trophy won in your time at the club. And well, of course, when I signed my 3-year deal, I always felt that I'd get at least 1 year to have a crack in the top flight with Rangers, but it wasn't to be. But yeah, that season, as you say, you could slowly start to feel that maybe the tide had turned for the club and maybe more positive times were ahead.
In terms of individual days and individual moments from your career, the Celtic game at Hampden, scoring your penalty, a penalty that I believe you shouldn't even have been taken at that stage. Yeah. Where does that rank in terms of just the moments and highs and thrills for you?
Yeah, one of the best in my career, certainly my best day as a Rangers player had come as I say. I knew that come the end of the season I was leaving the club and I was going into a new challenge somewhere else. I think we were going into the game pretty confident. We knew we could certainly match Celtic that day. We were flying at that point, but we went into the game a little with some injuries, some suspensions, so we were short. I don't even think we had a full bench for that game. I might be wrong, but I'm pretty sure we didn't. I think we only maybe named 5 or 6 subs that day, and I hadn't been involved for a couple of months. Certainly, I was always on the bench, but I wasn't coming on. So my match fitness was definitely not up to scratch. But I had an idea that definitely, if it went into extra time, that I may be getting involved just purely on suspensions and injuries alone. And I think 65 minutes in, Dean Shields had started the game. Neither of us were wingers, but just of how short we were. I think Waggy was injured, and other suspensions, as I say. Dean, it was between me and Dino to start, I think, maybe on the right wing. At that point, I think it looked like Dino was definitely more in favour, and he was maybe going to get another year anyway to his contract. So Dino started the game, and similar to myself, I hadn't been involved a lot, so it was always going to blow up. And tracking, I think, Kieran Tierney at that point was certainly not one of Dino's most enjoyable games, I can imagine. But blew up maybe 65 minutes, and then I came on. And I always remember someone saying, like, coming on in a game like that was similar to obviously maybe joining an F1 race in the middle of the race. And I always felt that was a good analogy. That was what it was like, particularly out of position, playing right wing forward of a 4-3-3, which Mark liked to play, certainly didn't play to my strengths, but such as the short numbers we had, it was just good for me to obviously get out on the pitch again for Rangers, and you'd play anywhere, but it's just good to get the chance. And again, in an old firm game, which at that point we were winning 1-0, I think, and we were unbelievable in the first half. We were far better than Celtic in that first half and should have been leading by more. And of course, I came on. I can't remember if it was 1. I think it was 1-0 when I came on. Anyway, it went 1-1 into extra time. Obviously, Baz scores that wonder goal, and you're 2-1 up again. And we were looking tired at that point and started like they were maybe getting on top. And then Baz scores that, and then you picked up again. And obviously, maybe typical of obviously playing for Rangers, that Tierney gets down the left, beats me, cuts it back. Rogic scores 2-2, and obviously in the back of my mind, I know that that it's too easy. It's maybe my fault that they've equalised, and you're like, oh, it's a nightmare. If we lose this game, it's my fault, and all these thoughts start to run around in your head during the game. But yeah, you just try and brush it off and get on the best you can. And I felt I kind of did that, and then it went to penalties, and again, you're starting to think, you wish you'd have done better. You'd have stopped Tierney getting down the left and stopped the cross or whatever. And I remember the night before we stayed in Marhall, as we always would before any big game, and the sheet got passed around. If it goes to penalties, if you fancy one, put your name down. And I think obviously the team was named at that point, so all the lads that were starting would put their names down, and then we as subs would say that we fancied it, but we'd be 8th, 9th in the list, of course, at that point. So I think I was 8th. So you think, it's probably not going to get to 8 anyway. So it did, and then it obviously got to, I can't remember the actual score, but the 7th penalty taker was Danny Wilson. He was down as the 7th, but Gideon Zalal, for some reason, had pushed himself up in the queue because he was obviously a sub that day as well. I think he went early. So I'm stood there waiting for Danny to go, thinking, oh no, it might come to me as the 8th one here next. And he's like, it's you. And I was like, no, you're 7. And he was like, no, Gideon went. So it's actually you now as 8. I don't think really Danny fancied taking the penalty. And I've always said, when I look back now, it's probably a blessing really that it went that way, because I think the more time you had to think about it, the more nervous you would have been. So I kind of go up. Thank God managed to put the penalty away, which is such a relief. Obviously, you don't want to be the guy that cost the team again, when obviously you felt that it wouldn't have got to that position if you'd have stopped the cross. But it went in, and then, of course, Roderick missed the next penalty, and it turned out to be the winning penalty. So, and the celebrations and obviously the relief, not just on the field, but in the stands as well, in the Rangers end, it was unbelievable. It was the first time, obviously, that Rangers had beat Celtic in that period since everything that had happened with the relegations and that. And it just kind of felt that it was a huge step made, and to be a part of it was an unbelievable feeling that day. And kind of, it's weird, obviously, that of course we still had the final to play. It kind of felt like you'd won the cup that day with the celebrations, but of course we hadn't, and we obviously went on to lose the final to Hibs in the end. But for pure emotion and joy, I would certainly say that was the best day of my career, probably, but certainly of my playing time with Rangers.
As you say, Nicky, you're back at Hampden just a few weeks later for the final. A historic one, but not for the right reasons. Unfortunately, you don't get off the bench. You're sitting watching the action unfold. You see Rangers going into the last 10 minutes, 2-1 ahead. You must be thinking, no, this is our Scottish Cup. This is our wee slice of history. How can you then explain what happened? You also had the Hibs fans and that on the pitch at the end, which is all rather unsavoury and kind of tainted it a wee bit. But how can you sum up that last 10 minutes? What happened to Rangers? And if you can, take us inside the dressing room after the end of the game.
Yeah, as you say, Andy Halliday scores, and you think you're winning your Scottish Cup. Would have been my first Scottish Cup. It was a competition I always wanted to win in my time in Scotland. I remember 2-1, obviously, thinking you're close. And then it goes 2-2. Looks like extra time. I was actually coming on at that point. Getting stripped just as the ball goes out for a corner at 2-2. Reds come on, and then, of course, it comes in. Hibs score 3-2, and there's hardly any time on the clock left to get an equaliser, and obviously got told to sit back down, and just like that. Obviously, you think you're going to win it, and then before you know it, you've lost, and Hibs have won the cup. But then obviously everything that happened afterwards was just crazy. From obviously the dugouts are really high up at Hampden, so you kind of just I don't know, you just froze, sat in the dugout watching obviously all their fans spill on, and then some of ours trying to spill on to kind of protect the players, and obviously everybody knows what happened and how crazy and obviously unacceptable the behaviour was, but there's nothing you can do. You just stood there watching and you're just trying to. Then again, we were short-handed on the bench. I think there's only 3 of us on the bench. We're going down, trying to get as many lads off the pitch as we can safely, and all the staff are trying to do the same. And obviously, in the end, everybody gets into the change room. And again, as I've said, how low spells of my time at Rangers were at the club. That was another one of the really low points. Of course, losing that final, winning that would have topped off the perfect season. Really, winning the league, the petrified, and then it looked like we were going to win that as well. It would have been the perfect treble to top off a really good season. But yeah, it wasn't to be. Obviously, I couldn't tell you what happened on the day. It was just Hibs were a good side as well at that point. Obviously, John McGinn, Anthony Stokes, people like that. They were a good side. That we'd had good games against them all season long, not just in that season, but the season before in the Championship. It was a side that gave as good as we gave over those 2 seasons. I think we'd split the games that season in the league. I think we'd won 2, they'd won 2, and obviously, again, they won the final. I think it was something like that anyway. But no, they were always tough games. They were a good side. They always seemed to play well against us. But I wouldn't say that that they deserved it. I wouldn't say we deserved it. But it was, certainly bitterly disappointing, and a really disappointing end to obviously my Rangers career, which was obviously very topsy-turvy 3 years.
As you say, that proved to be your final game or your final day as a Rangers player. How did you find out that you wouldn't be kept on by Warburton for next season? He obviously had plans in place to bring in Joey Barton and Cranchard and take the squad a different direction, throw a bit more money at it. How was your exit handled?
Again, it was in the January. It was a bit of speculation. I think I read that they'd offered me an exchange for Michael O'Halloran, I think it was, to go to St Johnstone. Nobody told me about it, obviously, but I read that it was an option, but I think it was denied. And I know Barnsley came in for me to go there in January, and I don't think the club were against me going, but it never happened anyway. So I kind of knew before January really that it was definitely going to be my last season. I just wasn't sure whether that would be in January or if I'd be there for the full season. I think Mark Warburton brought all the out of contract lads in to his office for a chat, maybe April time, once kind of the Championship was kind of over. But strange talks, really. It was never that you weren't going to stay, kind of say, what's your plans for next season and things like that. And it was, I was, for myself personally anyway, I was kind of a little bit confused, if you like. I wasn't sure what he kind of meant by it. Usually, obviously, it'd be that you're not getting kept on with, but he kind of, the way he worded it was quite strange. It was just, what are your plans for next season and all this? So it was a weird one, but kind of with the gist of obviously you're not staying, which I knew anyway. As you say, I think they'd definitely agreed to sign Josh Windass and Crooks. I know that they were done quite early, which was obviously 2 midfielders, and then further down the line, Joey Bart and Nico Cranchard were coming in. So you always knew, but it was never actually said that you released, kind of thing. So it was quite strange the way he did it, but I think that was the way obviously Mark was. He was not the controversial type, that's for sure. So yeah, it was kind of done that way, kind of that you were going, but not. It was never that you were going. It doesn't really make sense, but it was quite strange anyway. as I say, so many good qualities that Mark had. I do feel that some of the stuff he did was quite strange.
Funnily enough, Dean Shields kind of says similar in regards to he was something you touched on. He was supposed to get a year and then he didn't. But you did have obviously the kind of the highs of the final year, and you did play a vital part in the journey back, Nicky. Which is, I know, see, talking about it now, it's definitely not plain sailing. It was, it's definitely a part of the club's history that we look back with definite, kind of ups and downs and things like that. But something we like to do at the end of every podcast, and we are coming to the end of it now because you've been brilliant with your time, and we thank you very much. But kind of some quick fire questions. But what did you enjoy the most about your time at Rangers?
Definitely the opportunity and experience of particularly the home games, playing in front of such big crowds, and the atmosphere and things like that was something that was the main reason why I signed, and it definitely didn't disappoint.
Now, you scored a few crackers, Nicky. You had a habit of coming in and bending in these shots. Is there any in particular that you remember, perhaps your favourite goal for Rangers?
Yeah, as you say, they're all seems pretty similar goals, really, cutting in and kind of curling them in the far post. I think my first one, obviously, in the game at Livingston, Lee Wallace crossed, and obviously I put it in and then scored kind of one of those curling ones from a short corner routine. Were good goals, but yeah, obviously not an official goal, but I'd say the biggest, obviously, was maybe the penalty against Celtic.
And finally, favourite kind of, although it's difficult because it seems it's been a turbulent time, but we like to ask people their favourite kind of funny story, and they sometimes mention Jimmy Bale. Stuart McCall talked about the time that Gascoigne stole his clothes and he had to go home in a tracksuit and things like that. But what's your kind of maybe funniest story that you can tell us about the dressing room at Ibrox?
Yeah, it's a tough one, obviously. I don't know. I mean, Alan McCoist was brilliant. Obviously, I still listen to him this day every morning on TalkSport when I go to work. He's such a funny guy, and his stories are unbelievable. Even now, when you look back, obviously at the time it was a nightmare, but even him getting up and on the night after the Challenge Cup final and doing his meatloaf at the ground was obviously, now looking back, hilarious. So a lot of them would probably be Alan McCoist, but from the lads, I don't know. That was a good one, which you touched on earlier. Obviously, getting all the new lads to line up to do the kits, and then them putting us in XL shorts, XL tops. Of course, not me because I got no hair, but all the lads doing their hair, thinking they're going to look brilliant, and then obviously these pictures get released of us all looking stupid, really, side on doing stupid poses and things like that. So I'd probably say that was definitely one of them. There's maybe a few which I can't say too much about, but no, I mean, obviously we've touched on today about the difficult times. I mean, there's some good times in there as well. Met some really funny people. Dean Shields, obviously, you had him on. He was hilarious. Some of the stuff he used to do as well. So there's some good times as well, of course. And I certainly don't regret making the move to Rangers. It's definitely the proudest I've been signing for any club. So yeah, no, some tough times, some good times as well, but all great experiences as well.
So a perfect way to end the podcast, and a brilliant insight into Nicky's time and his career so far. We obviously wish him all the best at Exeter whenever football restarts. Nicky, thanks for your contribution to Rangers. You won some trophies. You helped us on the way back up, and really enjoyed hearing about your time at the club. And we wish you all the best. Thanks very much for coming on.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
A great insight into Nicky's time at Rangers, Chris. It was certainly up and down, and I felt kind of bad in a way because Nicky Law, he should have had a better time at the club. He did, like Dean Shields and people before, he kind of suffered the worst of the the kind of spiv area of boardroom behaviour and things like that. But he did at least get to experience winning some trophies under Warburton and the kind of highs of the semi-final victory over Celtic, which obviously we don't celebrate because this is Rangers and we didn't win anything. But it's certainly nice to hear him say that it's been one of the proudest moments of his career, signing for the club and things like that. He speaks very well about us in a time where he's probably within his rights to look back with not the fondest memories.
As Nicky said himself, I think unless you were in that dressing room and you're part of that squad, nobody really knows how difficult it must have been to kind of go through it and experience. The fans always remember all the off-field things that were going on. Some really dark days on the park as well. And I think there's a lot of guys from that squad, as Nicky said himself. If he had been at Rangers 5-6 years earlier, or if he had been at Rangers over the last couple of seasons, it would have been a very different experience for him. Now, he might not have played as many games, might not have got in the team often, obviously under Steven Gerrard or under Walter Smith before that. But being at Rangers now, or being at Rangers not during Walter's time, or Big Alec McLeish's time that we've heard about in the podcast, that's a very different Rangers experience to the type that Nicky Law or Dean Shields or these type of guys got during those years. And a really difficult time for the club, really difficult time for the fans. And while they might not be the most successful or the most talented, as you say, the guys like that still played their part in getting Rangers back up through the leagues. As you had, all the guys we have on, they all speak so fondly about Rangers and the supporters and the experience of being a Rangers player. Even though Nicky had some tough times, it's nice to hear him still say he has that fondness and affection for the club.
Yeah, definitely. And I think with that said, we're always appreciative of people coming on and spending their time and speaking so candidly and honestly, and Nicky did. So with that said, Chris, as usual, thanks for joining us. Great to have you on with us.
No problem at all. Looking forward to the next one.
Yeah, and they are coming thick and fast. So it's just the usual finish. We'll thank Stuart Franklin and the boys over at Gersnet. They host and they help us do this and edit and things like that, stuff that I don't know how to do. So they all help there, and that's much appreciated. Get yourself on Gersnet and join in the discussion. There's always something to talk about with Rangers, even when there's no football being played. And obviously our sponsors, KGM Printing Services and Custom Kitchen Factory. The boys on there look after us really much, and they've helped us raise around £13,000 for the Rangers Youth Development, which we support. And we're all about helping the guys, Colin Stewart, and trying to do our bit there. And once this finishes, lockdown and things, and everyone's safe again, we'll restart our fundraising, something we're very passionate about. So all I can say is thank you to everyone that's listened. We hope that you've enjoyed this. Again, another unique tale. We've had guys on like Alex McLeish, who's it's all full of trophies and things. But as we know, as the last few years being a Rangers fan, it's not always sweetness and light, but we certainly are still the biggest and the best club in the world, in my belief anyway. So thanks for joining us. Until next time, ignore the nonsense, the irrelevant, and the noise.